All right, let's dive into Symantec Endpoint Encryption. Now, SEE is an incredible tool for making sure your data is locked down tight, but getting the configuration right is absolutely everything. This explainer is all about cutting through that complexity. We're going to give you a clear, high-level guide to the concepts you really need to get your head around, from the first setup all the way to long-term health. So, let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to build up our understanding across 5 key areas. We'll start with the absolute non-negotiables, the foundation. Then we'll layer on how you actually set your policies and manage who can do what. From there, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of deploying the software, and we'll wrap it all up with how you keep the whole system running smoothly and securely.
First up, the foundation. You've got to get this right. These are the core pieces that your entire SEE environment is built on. Seriously, if you understand these concepts from day one, every single thing you do after this will make more sense and be way more secure.
Okay, let's talk about your ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card, the whole disk recovery token, or WDRT for short. I want you to think of this as the master key for a machine that's completely locked out. Say you've got a user on a computer that's not managed by AD, they forget their password, and they're just stuck at that pre-boot screen. Well, this token is your one and only way back in.
And let me be perfectly crystal clear about this. If you don't have that WDRT, the data on that drive is gone. Forever. There's no backdoor, no secret handshake, it's just lost. So your first job, your most important procedure, should be to save this token somewhere incredibly safe, probably off-site, the very second it's created.
Now, if the WDRT is the key to a single machine, then the management password, well, that's the key to the entire kingdom. You're going to need this for installations, for upgrades, for high-level recovery, basically any major administrative task you can think of. And that's exactly why Symantec's own guidance is so blunt about it. You have to protect and store this password with extreme care.
All right, with our foundation secure, it's time to start defining the rules of the road. In the world of CEE, this is all handled through policies. You can think of policies as the central nervous system that controls exactly how encryption works across your whole organization.
So this slide gets to a really fundamental choice you have to make. Are you going to use Active Directory group policies or C's own native policies? AD policies, as you'd expect, are for your domain-joined machines. They follow that standard precedence order: local, site, domain, and then organizational unit, or LSDOU. Native policies are for everything else, and they follow a simpler order: computer, subgroup, and then group. Knowing which is just crucial for making sure the right rules are hitting the right machines.
And within those policies, you have some amazingly granular control. Just take passwords, for example. You're not just setting a minimum length. No, you can define the exact recipe for what makes a strong password. You can specify exactly how many uppercase letters, how many lowercase, how many numbers, and how many special characters are required. It's pretty powerful stuff.
So, you've got your foundation, you've got your rules. What's next? Well, now we have to decide who gets to do what. This next section is all about the different hats people can wear in the SEI ecosystem, from your top-level admins all the way down to your everyday end users. And this table does a great job of laying out the hierarchy. Way up at the top, you have your policy administrators, who are basically managing the whole system. Then, on the ground, you have client administrators, providing that local, hands-on support for individual machines. Then you get these really interesting special roles: privileged users and system users. These accounts can manage the auto-log-on feature for things like automated patching, and they can do it without needing full-blown client admin rights. And of course, you've got the standard user, who just needs to log in at pre-boot to get their work done.
But it's not just about traditional credentials anymore. CI also embraces modern authentication with OAuth. And this is a really big deal for your security posture. Instead of just relying on static passwords that stick around forever, OAuth gives every single endpoint its own unique identity with these short-lived tokens that are constantly getting refreshed. This just dramatically shrinks your potential attack surface and moves you toward a much more secure, modern setup.
Okay, so you've set up your server, you've defined all your policies, and you've sorted out who's who with the roles. Now, it's time for the main event: actually getting the encryption software rolled out to your client machines.
The whole process kicks off in the management console. There's a handy wizard that just walks you right through creating a client installer package. You'll pick the features you need, you'll configure all the initial settings that the clients will get right out of the gate, you'll define who the local admins are on those machines, and finally, you'll bundle it all up into a nice, neat MSI file that's ready to deploy.
But here is a classic real-world admin headache.
Imagine you need to push out a bunch of patches and they're going to require multiple reboots overnight. How in the world do you handle that pre-boot authentication screen when there's nobody there to type in a password?
And the answer, my friends, is the auto logon feature. It's brilliant. It lets you temporarily bypass that pre-boot authentication for a specific number of restarts. And as we saw back in the roles section, this can be managed by client admins or, even more securely, by designated privileged users or the system account for all your automated scripting needs. It is an absolute lifesaver during maintenance windows.
And that brings us to our final section, keeping your system healthy. Because let's be honest, deployment is just the beginning, right? A truly effective administrator is always monitoring, always reporting, and always planning for what comes next.
And C gives you some fantastic visibility with its reporting tools. The admin log tracks everything your policy admins are doing. The group policy report gives you what's called the resultant set of policy, or RSOP, which is just a fancy way of confirming that your clients are getting the exact policies you intended. And the server web access report provides a complete audit trail of every command issued.
And speaking of secure procedures, the documentation gives this really critical piece of advice. When you're deploying clients using a shared folder, it is so tempting to just set the permissions to everyone to make it easy. Symantec is basically begging you not to do that. They urge you to follow your organization's security policies and to lock that folder back down the very moment your deployment is finished.
Finally, let's look at the lifecycle here. Upgrading your SC environment, it's a multi-step process, but it follows a really logical path. You always start by verifying all your prerequisites. Then, and this is critical, you perform a full backup of your database. Then you run the upgrade wizard on the server. And only when that backend is ready do you start deploying the new client package out to all your endpoints.
And that really brings us to our final thought. Encryption is the goal, of course, but it's only half the battle. What we've seen here is that a successful SEE deployment isn't just about scrambling data. It's about building this robust framework of policies and roles and secure procedures around it. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Your data is encrypted, but is it truly manageable?